the customers or the lack of, you do get a sense that your job could be at risk. And then there's talk and about maybe hours being reduced. And then it does happen. It is very difficult. You just have to get on with it, unfortunately. But, to lose your job, it's quite difficult.
Well, Kate Hardcastle is a retail and consumer expert. Hello, Kate.
Hi there.
I know we've seen big brands fail before, but there was a time when some of those brands that we mentioned that were part of Arcadia absolutely dominated the high street, and you would have suggested that they were one of these companies that was too big to fail.
It was one of those brands, particularly the jewel in the crown, Topshop, because obviously the Arcadia group includes brands such as Dorothy Perkins and Burton's that maybe had their heyday a little before Topshop, but as well as the affiliations with Kate Moss, Beyonce. I remember hearing from people arriving in the UK, literally landing in Heathrow and Gatwick, and then heading straight to Oxford Street before anything else to go spend the day in Topshop. It was the pinnacle of retail theatre. You had tattooists in there, you could have your hair done, you could spend hours in the cafes and restaurants buying fashion. The thing was, that was only one store that created that environment, and it was a legacy to live off. But across the UK, all of the rest of the brands were in that traditional retail territory of being a closed shop. And that, along with underinvestment, heightened competition, and a lot of change in the consumers themselves, meant they've just faded away and not been able to keep a pace with this really changing marketplace.
Is there any suggestion that anybody might want to take over those brands? I know that Mike Ashley at one point had been linked with some possible interest.
Yes, well, I'm afraid there's a little bit of rivalry between Sir Philip Green and Mike Ashley. It's a little bit like who wants to complete the monopoly board first. But to that aside, there will be a lot of interest in these brands. But I would imagine that the bidders are going to be looking at a really pivotal piece of e-commerce. It's all about online right now, particularly for that consumer group. And whatever happens, whoever gets them and however much of the real estate they take on, it's not going to be as much, I don't think, as it is, which means that then we've got lots of challenges. The poor 13,000 workers who've been trying to turn this around, the fact that we're going to have these black spots in our high streets once again at a time when our local authorities are just bled dry of resources, and they're going to have to radically change our high street to be more around living and places to be rather than places to shop. And the fact that that will have a knock-on effect immediately to other retailers who might have survived if they'd have had that little boost of footfall being next to a big brand, because these brands are the ones that cast a shadow when they're no longer in the high street. We saw that with BHS. We even saw that with Woolworths. So we're going to go through definitely some short-term pain.
It is probably hard to predict as well, Kate. Obviously, the pandemic has had a real effect on many, many businesses. Was that the thing that finally sealed it for Arcadia? Might it have survived longer if circumstances had been different?
Look, it's gone through a huge financial renegotiation last year when it had come out with really challenging financial figures. And certainly a lot of the brands just weren't pulling their weight. Topshop was probably the one that could have made it through, maybe without having to hold up all the rest of the others. But again, a really competitive marketplace. I think we've got to be honest in saying that, yes, COVID probably was the straw that broke the camel's back. But realistically, these brands were underinvested, relevant to the times and days we live in. This is no longer a trader mentality. The consumer tail is wagging the dog in terms of what they're demanding from retailer brands. And anyone will tell you it's a difficult sector to be in and will be for some time to come.
Thank you, Kate. Kate Hardcastle, who's a retail and consumer expert.